Mm. Okay, so I'm going to talk about myself, some of the projects that I think might be interesting for people to hear about. Then I'm going to talk about the context of what we're trying to achieve and how that fits in with envisioning a positive future. I'm going to talk about how dystopia relates to utopia or positive futures. And then I'm going to get you to make your own mark. We'll do a little exercise to just get you thinking about visualizing um, a positive future and how you might do that, and how you might do that for yourselves or in communities for yourself. So yeah, that's the general structure of the talk, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. So please post any questions that you might have in the chat. So, as I said, I'm an artist, I'm an illustrator. So, I come from a background in doing comics and illustrations. I'm very interested in science fiction. I've done a comic series called Flesh for 2000 AD, which is a famous magazine in the UK, all about dinosaurs and cowboys in the future. Well, cowboys traveling into the past to hunt dinosaurs for flesh. So that ran for a few years. So that's the kind of stuff that I've done in the past. And I moved from doing a lot of those kinds of stories into working with scientists to actually reconstruct the past. So I've always been interested. This has happened in parallel with my comics work and science fiction work. So this is a picture of me doing some of my artwork where I use scientific research and I work with scientists who commission me to create paintings of the things that they want to communicate. So in this case, it's creating a landscape from the past. So using up to date, really cutting edge scientific knowledge to do that. So this shows you a reconstruction of a settlement in America um, before Europeans arrived. Um, and so it's looking at kind of archaeological sites and imagining a whole world of the past and everything that goes in there, the people, the animals, the plants, the cities, the landscape. Here's another picture that I've done of a site in the UK, which is called Star Car. So it's one of the first settlements in the UK after the Ice Age in Yorkshire. And there's a huge wealth of scientific discovery. And this was trying to pull it all together. So everything in the picture has been found in the archaeological site. Even the planks of wood that people are walking on at the water's edge, and boats and things, and the animals, all the animals, the birds, the dogs, and everything in the picture have been found in the archaeological site. So it's trying to imagine an ancient world. So I don't just do people, I do animals. So I reconstruct ancient creatures, dinosaurs, prehistoric reptiles, prehistoric mammals, and invertebrates. And this is an animal from the Mesozoic, the Jurassic, which has been discovered. And I've worked with the scientists to try and work out how these animals lived and what they really looked like and how they moved, how they ate, the ecology of how their world worked. This picture is kind of a bit different. It's more of an infographic. So I've worked with this group of scientists who are drilling into a glacier to try and work out how warm it is compared to how it should be. So glaciers are warming up due to climate change, and that can cause catastrophic meltwater burst floods. So they're trying to work out what are the risks of the floods happening. And they drilled into the glaciers and they found that actually the temperature of the glacier towards the bottom of the glacier was really high. So there's a big risk of terrible sort of outwater flows from the glacier. And this graphic explainer was used to contact villages and communities in the area around Mount Everest to show them, what the project was doing and what it meant for their societies. So it was kind of used for people that maybe wouldn't be able to read um, the complicated scientific papers or anything, but wanted to know what was happening with the project. So this was a bit of a highlight of my career. So one of my pictures was used on the cover of the international journal Nature. And this kind of leads into the work that we're going to talk about. So this is visualizing ancient climate change. This is from a time during the time of the dinosaurs when there were forests at the South Pole, and they were there because the climate was extremely warm. There were very high greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and that meant that even within 200 kilometers of the South Pole, you had subtropical jungles full of monkey puzzle trees and giant tree ferns, and dinosaurs would have been walking around. And you have to remember that because it's at the South Pole, they would have been in darkness for half the year. So you've got a jungle, strange jungle that would have been dark, um, but warm and steamy at the South Pole. A very strange environment. And this was discovered by the scientists. So they discovered the remains of an ancient forest. So that's really cool. And it was an amazing project to be part of. So those are the kind of things that I came from doing. And then I got involved with working with researchers, PhD researchers on projects with the Royal Academy of Engineering, where we tried to envision the future. So working with young people, school children, uh, PhDs, undergraduates, and all sorts of different people to try to get them to think about their ideas about the future. So scientific ideas, but also creative ideas. So we went out to hundreds of schools and we got the children to draw their own ideas about the future. So some of them, did it as an art class. Some of them did it as a science class. Some of them did it as just some homework to show that they could use a particular computer program or something. But we got amazing responses, and then that was made into we created worlds and visions of the future based on the school children's ideas and the the researchers, the PhD researchers who were trying to communicate their work about the energy transition and about sustainable living. So you can see here some of this artwork was produced by 11-year-old children. It was really amazing to be part of those projects. We got so much work from them. So we created um, uh, a series of comic books, well, sort of comic art books, really, trying to imagine the world in the future. So we were working on York. We were working in Yorkshire. That's where I live, and imagining what Yorkshire might look like in 150 years' time as a positive zero carbon society, and using that to communicate lots of different aspects of the transition to a sustainable future. And these projects were shortlisted for a national award for working with young people. And you can have a look at these and download them from our website. The links are in the chat that you can have a look at the top of the chat. So my work was featured by Rob Hopkins, who's the founder of the Transition Towns movement in the UK. So he did a book from what is to what if. So that really chimes with my work. My work is about imagining things that people are just thinking about. So using artwork to inspire change by providing a positive view of something. So we can't think of a positive future without having some kind of vision of it in front of us. It's really important, even though you may think that a particular image is not right, or it's kind of odd, or you don't agree with it, but it gets people thinking, it gets people inspired. So what I talked about with Rob in his book and his blog, is about how we do that and what it means for using art to inspire real change. So I'd recommend that book. And again, the link to Rob Hopkins' blog is in the chat, so you can have a look at that later on. So I'll just talk for a couple of minutes about my project that I'm a key member of within my own community, where we're creating a network of nature reserves in the UK, in Yorkshire. So it's under the umbrella of Longlands Common. So if you Google that, you'll be able to find it. And my artwork was used to inspire the campaign to buy the land, by getting everybody in the community to contribute to buying the land. And they wanted images of what the land could look like in the future. And so I used my artwork to inspire everybody in the campaign. And I think that that was a key part of getting people excited about the project. So this was the image that we used for a lot of the fundraising. And now we have the land. I often provide images of different projects within the land that might show what it could look like in the future. So this is a view of the actual land. So it started out just as a couple of fields, and now we've planted millions of trees. We're managing hedgerows, we're creating ponds, all working with the community. And it's as important to bring the community together to educate them about ecology and about how we can grow food sustainably, because part of the land is used for a food forest. So we are using the project to educate people about how we can live with nature around our urban areas, and get people to have more knowledge about how they can exist with nature, learn more about how nature works, and grow their own food, and get heavily involved and make it as accessible as possible. So that the project has lots of aims. Here's some of the wildlife that's on the site. So we have amazing things happening there. We've got quite rare species appearing, and this is all within an area that's quite urban. So it's really exciting to see all of that going on. And we have a shed where we keep all of our tools and things. And this really says it all. I want my artwork to inspire real projects and real change, as well as kind of providing an idea of what the future in general could look like. So I'm really excited when a project uses my artwork to do something that then turns into a real finished article. So just talking about the context, really, I'm sure that a lot of people will be aware of the donut idea, from Kate Raworth, which is the idea that we have to live within the donut. So if we're inside the ring of the donut, that's where people are suffering. They're not getting enough of something, which either it's food or access to healthcare, and we have to provide more of that. Whereas outside of the ring, we are actually doing too much pollution, or we're having too much of an impact on the environment. So we have to stay within the donut. So our society has to have that kind of balance between not using too many resources, but also providing for those who really need it. And the other thing that's really important as part of that concept is that everything in our economies and our society comes from the earth around us, the ecosystem around us. The economy is part of the ecosystem. So anything that the economy does that harms the ecosystem harms the economy. So we have to bear that in mind, and that kind of idea of ecological economics is really important, and it underpins everything that I think about in terms of my artwork. And the other thing is that with the transition to a sustainable future, it's us that are the problem. So I myself do things that cause carbon emissions, um, and so I'm part of the problem. I'm more part of the problem than someone living in, say, Indonesia, who is a subsistence farmer, who's lives at a very less carbon intensive level. And historically, the countries in the global north have caused the most of the problem. So we in the global north are, the contributors to the problem, but we're also the people that are trying to solve the problems. And the other thing is it's a slow motion thing, so people don't think about it every day. We have to tackle climate change, but because we don't see it immediately around us, unless there's a particular disaster like the Los Angeles wildfires or something, um, we just forget about it. And also, we have uncertainty about almost every aspect of it, so that makes things difficult. And I worked with Joel Pett on the projects. He provided this brilliant cartoon for us, which people might have seen, but it basically sums it up. It's in order to tackle climate change, we have to establish a utopian society, which is a wonderful thing. So all of the things that we need to do to make our societies better will help us with climate change, tackling climate change. So some of my artwork, the projects that I've worked on, use these things called shared socioeconomic pathways. And this is what scientists use when they're trying to create scenarios for the future, where they're maybe predicting how people might transition to different modes of transport that are more sustainable, or something about how we're tackling flooding in the future or risks of flooding in the future. So they have 5 kind of official stories about the future, which are underpinned by lots of research. And these are really science fiction. So I'm quite interested how they actually came up with these, but I don't really know. But they're used in so many different projects that I get involved with it. So you have 5 different versions of the future, and one of them, the middle of the road one, is basically carrying on as we are. Another one, number 3, is where everything falls apart and we turn into kind of Mad Max world, and that's obviously a bad situation. And then the one at number 5, the fossil fuel high road, is where we just do a kind of a Trump world where we drill, baby, drill, and cause maximum pollution. But my interest is in number 1, the green road, and that's a lot of the time where people ask me to produce images for a particular site or a place. So here we have a place in Leeds, near where I live in Yorkshire, under 2 different versions of the future. So this was all about kind of flooding and societal issues around how we deal with that. And the first one is the kind of uh, green road type idea, lots of public transport, lots of things that are tackling climate change. And then the other one is the regional rivalry one, where everything's falling apart and we're kind of collapsing into a military state where everyone's desperately poor. And this is the sort of the end point of that. So we know what dystopia looks like. Um, we see it all around us. You see it in Gaza or Yemen or Afghanistan, um, and we see it in so many Hollywood movies. We know exactly what dystopia is. What we don't know is what the zero carbon future, a good future, looks like. So we have to use lots of creativity and problem solving to kind of get there. But we have to think that lots of people have different visions for that future. And so, there could be lots of different valid visions. Some of them might be extremely controversial. Some of them could be ones that people can buy into. But it means that we've really got to think. The dystopia is easy because we don't really have to think about it. And that's what I find in the projects that I've run, where I ask people to create their own artwork. They always kind of uh, veer towards the dystopia, even when you tell them to focus on the positive, just because it's so easy. It's the good future that takes the hard work to imagine. And this was where some of the books came from, that we've worked on with the children, all about many visions of the future. And then we developed further books that just explored the good version of a kind of a community built future. And so in that good version, here are some of the things that we talked about or communicated through artwork. Things like having a circular economy or zero carbon buildings, um, gross national well-being rather than gross domestic product. All of these things have been talked about by lots of different scientists, and there are huge research teams all over the world trying to ensure that these become the basis for our society. But all my artwork is kind of bound up with trying to visualize all of those things. So in one of the books that we talked about, we had Yorkshire in the future, with sea level rise causing a huge lagoon. So this is only a couple of meters of sea level rise in the middle of next century, but it basically makes an inland sea in the middle of the UK. And you would think, yeah, that's a disaster. But in our book, we talked about how people would adapt and mitigate. So living on kind of floating settlements and having renewable energy technologies all around. So the idea here, and in this brilliant piece of artwork from my colleague John Swagger, um, shows what the possibilities are and how that could look. And just to um, promote John's work, he's an amazing figure. He's an archaeologist who creates artwork about archaeological sites to show people what the site involves and what it's doing. And he used his techniques to show what could happen in the future for our projects. This is one of my most popular pieces of work where I visualized my community in the future. It's been used on book covers all over the world, magazines, websites, um, and it's obviously struck a chord because it kind of shows the whole system, the whole environment, the transport, the food growing, the biological diversity, the energy generation, and all of those things put together. And it's all about using real places. So not drawing wild imaginings of green cities that don't have any basis in reality. It's about thinking, what happens in my town right now? What would that look like depending on what we do? These were some illustrations that I did for a book called Unlocking Sustainable Cities, with a professor called Paul Chatterton in the UK. And you might spot on the right hand image one of the sort of energy structures that was an idea that came from one of the children that we worked on the projects. So just incorporating all those into our future stories. And I do my artwork live for particular events. So where people are doing transition type events, they often commission me to do a picture. So this was for a picture in Yorkshire, near where I live, showing a rewilded landscape in the middle of a town. And I like this picture to show it because it doesn't show it on a particularly sunny day. It's just been raining. There's big clouds in the sky, and it feels like a real a real place in a real time. So yeah, that to me that's exciting. I see a lot of artwork about the future where everything's just blue sky and fantastic green tower skyscrapers and things, but it doesn't really uh, show it as a real place. And when people see their community depicted, then they kind of that inspires them to get involved. So this is again a picture of me doing one of these pictures at a community festival, imagining the future and incorporating all the ideas that the community wants to work on, um, the eco projects that they're actually putting into place and raising funds for, and showing what they could look like and what they could mean for the town in the future. And just having that kind of live artwork happen really kind of gets people's interest, and so many questions and so many discussions arise from that. This is another picture that I did in a similar vein, and I've posted the link in the chat so you can have a look at that. It's just a couple of minute video about Leeds in the future. So after all those projects where we produce books and comics, I ended up getting involved in creating a film, which was an animation uh, about using my artwork to communicate about the transition to a sustainable future. So it's called No One is an Island, and it's a short film, so it's only about 10 minutes long, and it's being premiered worldwide at the moment. So there's lots of screenings in America and Canada and Caribbean, Europe. So that's all happening right now. It took about 2 years to make the film. And again, you can look at a link in the chat, which takes you to a trailer for the film and behind the scenes kind of chats and footage with myself and the animator, David Bunting, who directed the film. So again, this was working with researchers. So we were communicating their story through artwork. And that was a really exciting process. It's kind of like uh, an animated interview without any talking heads. So you you see it all through the visual metaphors of the artwork. So I'm going to now um, talk you talk you through a kind of a class that we would normally do with a community or with school children, um, to get you to think about your ideas. Because what happens when people see the film is that they're then left thinking, well, how do I do the same kind of thing? How do I use art to inspire change? So I'm going to get you to do a session just as a little test. So I would normally hold a class to create artwork about the future in a community centre or in a school, or with local government people in an office. First, I would ask them about what they know about climate change to try and get them to volunteer what they know, what they're interested in. So it's not giving them a lecture particularly, it's like getting them involved. Then giving them some information. So, we might have been invited there to talk about energy or some kind of new project that people are proposing or something. So whatever you might be involved in, maybe you can hold one of these sessions. So the first thing that we'd ask them to do, which I'm going to ask you to do now, if you've got a pen and a paper handy, is to describe or write down a couple of notes about what you like about the area that you live in. So this could be the local neighborhood, or it could be the whole town, or the region. So I'm just going to give you a minute to do that, to think about um, that. So just write down a couple of notes about what you like about your area. What is it that appeals to you about the place that you live? Okay. So I hope you've managed to think of at least one thing that you like about the area you live. Um, so now I'd like you to spend a couple more minutes and write down a couple of things about what you would like to improve. So maybe there's something that bothers you about the area or bothers you about the way people live in your area, something that you would want to improve or change in a positive way. So just a couple of minutes to write those ideas down. Okay, so I hope that people have managed to write down a couple of ideas about what they would like to do. So now comes the hard part. So normally in a class, we would give maybe half an hour for people to do this, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes. And I would like you to draw your idea. So the idea is that through drawing, you're accessing parts of your creative side that you wouldn't through writing. So drawing is incredibly powerful for helping people to be creative and see things in a different way. If you go out to um, a landscape and you start to draw it, even if your drawing is terrible, you start to see things within the landscape and how things fit together that people who might just only take a photograph would never see. And it's like that with trying to create your visions of the future. As you try to draw something, you realize things that you may not have thought about or taken for granted. So what I'd like you to do is just draw a very simple sketch, whatever you can manage. Could be stick people in a street or just a map or something, and just spend 5 minutes trying to do something like that. the final part of doing this exercise is then to present the work to each other and discuss and reflect on it, and maybe use it to generate more discussion, or work on a project that may come to fruition, something like the nature reserve that I talked about, or the some plan for a transport system in your town that could change, anything like that. So I've used this kind of approach in many different settings. It depends a lot on the personalities of the people involved, so what they want to do or who's involved, who might be leading it. You might have some renowned world leading expert on a particular topic, and they might be able to motivate people to do something really extraordinary about considering one aspect of the future. And yeah, you could be with school children who are really creative and have no boundaries, and end up drawing space aliens and zombies and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, they're great because you can just bounce ideas off them. You might be working with a really awkward group of adults who are disengaged, or being forced to go to some event, and that's more difficult. So you have to adapt this kind of idea. But once you have that kind of work, sometimes it can be really powerful, as a way to inspire people towards change. And this is my final slide, really. So the anything that we do or we think about is less radical than the pathway that we're on, that would be about kind of societal collapse and a terrible future, dystopian future, where things all go wrong. So people feel despair about the future, but visioning a positive future and actually trying to think through artwork and through creativity is a great treatment for anxiety and despair. And so, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. And thank you for listening. And I'd like to see some of that artwork that you mentioned, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, James. Is that okay, Dan, if I jump in and show a couple of these pictures? Amazing. So, James, you probably know that I'm quite a big fan. We've had a few email exchanges in the past, and ever since I encountered your work, I've thought it was so incredibly helpful for transitioners and anyone that's trying to create like positive, practical visions. And recently I had the chance to run a workshop with 30 students who are doing a one-year practical sustainability course. And we had a whole day together, and we talked about learning from nature and how to apply all their permaculture stuff, use it. And we used your workshop guidelines, and we got a map of Bristol out, and they chose an area of Bristol in the UK that they had a close relationship with, and they did like a whole redesign piece of artwork for
Wow.
that part of Bristol. And it was so incredibly fun. And at the end, they were all, because quite a lot of them are a bit despairing, or thinking that there's not a great deal that they can do, or feeling, yeah. So at the end, they all said, this was so inspiring, it feels super practical, I want to make this now in Bristol, I want to get involved in doing it. So it was incredibly effective practice. So I'm really encouraging other transition and community-led groups to try this practice with your people. So here's some of the, I've got 4 flip charts to show you. I don't know how much you'll be able to see them, but
Wow.
up with gorgeous designs with farmers markets and renewable energy and vertical gardens and rooftop gardens and rewilding projects and
Amazing.
new transport projects and new housing projects. They were bringing in well-being centres and music and all sorts of cultural events as well, to kind of make the city really good for well-being as well as good for nature and environment.
Yeah.
They had beavers in the River Avon. They had like vertical food gardens all up the kind of cliffs of the River Avon. They were putting in houseboats everywhere. They were turning the supermarkets into food co-ops and putting beehives on top. I mean, they just had so much fun with it. So I hope you can see some of the lovely art they created.
That sounds brilliant. It'd be
Yeah.
so you said that they were students, like what topic?
That's an
Yeah.
organisation called Shift Bristol that's been running for 20 years, and they do a 1-year extended practical sustainability course, and
Okay.
I'm one of the tutors on that course.
Okay. That's great. And yeah, I mean, it would be really amazing to like maybe team up that kind of activity with some artists who might then run with some of the ideas, create paintings or sculptures or film or something based on those sort of maps and plans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if any groups can have yourself or someone like you along to help with that, it really creates something that groups can anchor themselves to and orient around afterwards to keep them inspired.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. I should
Mm.
bring you along to all the talks that I do and have you show that stuff because that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing that yeah, I would hope to get at the end of one of these sessions.
Well, you know, I'd be happy to come and do stuff with you. We've talked about
Yeah.
that in the past, and I need to come
Yes.
up
Yeah.
with. I hear that really cool stuff is happening in Leeds anyway, and good bioregional projects and so on too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm just looking at the chat, and some people have asked about the trailer for the film and can we see the whole film? So the film that I mentioned, No One is an Island, is being premiered at film festivals at the moment. So my understanding is that they're kind of the film festivals sort of embargo it for a time period. So I'm not quite sure when we'll be able to share the film in its entirety online or through screenings at various different places. But um, if you check on that site, it will be constantly updated with our plans. So it's a really big team of people who are involved: producers, directors, animators, and a team kind of working on the distribution and the dissemination.